I mentioned yesterday that Warren has Western has an online presence, Warren has an online presence, and if you want to look up things in particular towns, this is through CAI, they're out of New Hampshire, I think it is. But they download, and I give them some information, download pictures and such, and if we want to see certain things about the properties. It has the assessment, if you want to get into the assessments. Oops. And I never use it because I have all this stuff already, but there's a sketch in here somewhere, which you can, building sketch, here we go. Not.
Oh, it's downloaded.
Down here, yeah. Oop. This will get, play around with other people's stuff. Yep. Let's go back to Chrome. But if you want to have an online presence, what it really does is cut down on broker calls and property owner calls and those kinds of things. They still need to call us for, are the taxes current and that kind of stuff. But if they just need a stock basic property card, they can come here and pick it up and print out what I have for information. It doesn't tell them of the heating system and the roof and all that kind of stuff. It's just very, very basic information. If they need more than that, then most of the systems can email out a property card, which I find very convenient. Except Maria in Somerville, she didn't understand that you could email it right out of Trio. She would print it, scan it, attach it, scan it, and I go, no. Right here, just click email a property card. Again, same thing. If somebody wants something, you need a property card, you need whatever, leave me an email, I'll send it to you next time I'm in and get that information off to you. But this has cut down on the number of visits. I'm a big fan of putting things online, not assessors are. I'm very happy to put commitment books available online. Deeds they can get at the registry. This kind of information is great. I upload this once a year, and it says that in the front. It may not be current because I'm trying to do this as of the commitment, as of April 1st. This is what I have, so I'm trying I could do it every day. But that just teaches people that I'm really better than I am, and I don't want to be that good. So, but you can get caught updating, stuff all the time. Like I mentioned yesterday, if you go to Realtor.com and you right-click Save As, drop it right into wherever you want to drop it. As far as I'm concerned, if it's on the internet, it's free. So, but I'm stealing people's stuff. Sometimes you get, photos of the back of the house, and those don't print on the property card, or the inside of the house won't print unless I want it to. It's just a front photo is what I'm looking for. Street view is what I'm looking for with the property. I'm not trying to evade people, but when I go and change their value, they're going to ask me why. I'm going, well, I have a brand new house inside. I just did one in Newcastle that was assessed for $36,000 plus the land. The whole value was around $80,000. It sold for $240,000. And I went, something's wrong here. Went to the property, knocked on the door, no one home. There's a UPS package at the front door, and I'm like, well, somebody's living here. Went on to stately.com. Oh, nice interior photos. Sent them a letter that said, sorry. Well, I wasn't sorry at all. Your value is changing, and here's why. Give them a guesstimate of the taxes. I'm sure I'm going to have a letter or something in the mailbox come Monday next week, but so be it. An appropriate adjustment. Like I said, I don't care fair or unfair. If I find out good information about the property that's factual, I'm going to make the adjustments as necessary, because that's our job. It says discover all value, right? It doesn't say how to discover it. So the assessor's page at the state got everything. And I have a bookmark this when you get it, but it'll have fillable PDF. What they have added to the exemption form is not only this town that you lived in, if you are moving from another town, but the exact location, the street address. Sometimes it's hard for us to go back and verify previous ownerships. And the assessors in the state are pretty good about talking to each other about people who've moved into town or moving out or something like that. Just to make sure people are not getting two homesteads in two places, or sometimes we work it out where, depending on the date of sale or not depending on the date of sale, one town will drop the homestead and I'll put it on, or vice versa, just so they continue to get a homestead. But just make sure they don't get crossed up too much with two homesteads. Sometimes there's an entitlement of two, but just due to dating, not more than anything else. They've sold the property April 2nd. The homestead is in the other town, but they own the one in my town in March, and we just work it out so they're not picking up two. Page 192, recapture penalty for withdrawal from open space classification within 10 years of a transfer from tree growth classification on or after 2012 would be the same as opposed as if the land were being withdrawn from tree growth classification. Yeah, 192, that first big paragraph right towards the bottom. That's one of those little, I don't think that's on the exam anywhere, but that's definitely one of those little things that will, if someone's trying to go from tree growth to open space to get out, and you can tell they've still got a 10-year deal on the tree growth, so.
Plum Creek used that before they changed the law to
Yeah.
their advantage.
Yeah.
But there's still a penalty, it's just not,
Even if there
It's
is.
tree growth
it's a
penalty,
not
tree growth
open
penalty
space
for
penalty.
10 years after moving from tree growth to open space. It's still a tree growth penalty.
A lot of people were thinking that you can just go ahead and switch, like I wanted to buy 20 acres of
Right.
tree growth. And so I was directed to say, well, if you just change it to open space, then all you have to do, is go ahead and then pay the open space penalty.
I thought you
Which
were
is
saying
right.
there was no
It
penalty
is the
after
same.
they transferred after 10 years.
There's an
a
open
penalty.
space
There's always the
Right,
penalty.
exactly.
Either that or the property is encumbered.
Right. And what I'll do on a letter that is acknowledging that we're going from tree growth to open space, I will put in the letter and reference this piece of statute.
Yeah.
And put that off to them. And I'll put that in their now open space file. And I've been known to mark right on red on the front of the open space copy, tree growth penalty until 2022 or whatever year the date might be. Yeah. I'm not planning ahead, but you never know what happens in life, so. Say I break my leg, I'm gone for 8 weeks. Guess what? I come back, the place is gonna be blown up. I don't want that to happen.
Do you, for your, the way you organize your files, do you have a set file for each map and lot, and then you have your open, you said you create a file for open spaces in the
Yep,
same
folder.
location? Okay.
Yep. I'm a big fan of the 3-ring folder. So I've got one that'll be tree growth or more than one, depending on how many tree growth. What color are my folders in tree growth? Green. There you go. Homesteads have their own 3-ring. Homesteads are by account number, not by name, because if I have to pull one, I'm only pulling one account number, I'm not looking for 2 names. So each property has a history of the tree growth. It's in the plastic. Open space, same thing. Approval letters all go out. Tree growth, when I get a tree growth application and I've signed it, I send them back a copy for their files. So they know, one, I've got it, and 2, they've got an approval in case something down the road doesn't happen. Farm space, same thing. They're supposed to have some income verification. My point of view on tree growth on a farm space is if I drive by in the fall and it looks and smells like a farm, it's probably a farm. If it looks like a couple years they haven't been doing anything, then I'll send them a letter and say, it doesn't look like you're doing anything. I need some income verification. Well, the thing with the income verification on a home farm is, you know, they've made a list of what they've taken out of the garden. You can do that on the word processor anytime. So, so I do the little tour towards harvest season, and if it looks like it's been hayed, and it looks like there's a cow in the field, or there's you know, whatever the case may be, there's a garden going on, I'll just make a quick note and I'm good to go. Not gonna fight that one too much. You know, again, the difference between excess land value and farm space value is not very significant. I'm gonna go check, because one, it gets me out of the office, and two, it gets me out of the office. But, you know, if it looks like if something's going on, I'm not.
But
gonna
also,
be-
they only need $2,000, and that doesn't have to be off-site. It can
Right,
be.
doesn't have to be at the farm stand, it can be on their own table, and,
Exactly.
Oh, so you just need $2,000 in value, not $2,000 cash?
correct.
Oh,
Not
okay.
$2,000, not 2,000 in sales.
Right, okay,
Right.
that's a very specific difference there.
It's a
Okay.
very
Huge
specific.
difference.
Yeah.
So, you know, if someone's, you know, if I see 5 acres and there's garden and pasture and a cow and a horse and a pig, and they're doing something that looks like a farm and smells like a farm and all that kind of good stuff. If it looks like the fields are grown up and they haven't been cut, you know, this time of year right now is easy, they're on their second cut down where I'm at. It's pretty easy to find out if that's still in pasture or not, or in hay. I did have a gentleman in Union who owned 5.5 acres, wanted to be in farm space selling eggs at the roadside. And I went, oh, well, first of all, you're probably gonna supply the fox population in your neighborhood if you're gonna free range your chickens on your 5 acres of wooded land. And second of all, how many chickens do you have? And I said, okay, I'll get back to you in a week or so. So I went to Searsmont, where my town clerk sells eggs and has chickens and knows how many chickens it takes to produce so many eggs for so much dollars. And I went, nope, you don't qualify. You don't have enough chickens.
That's an obscene amount of chickens to get
It's an
$2,000.
obscene, it absolutely is an obscene amount of chickens, and they don't, and you've got to turn them over. And I said, so I need your receipts of your purchases of your chickens. Well, I don't have those anymore. I go, well, you don't have homes, you don't have farm space either, so. Crazy. So, you know, all summer I drove by the house. Nope, no sign, $3 for eggs. No sign. No sign. You're not selling eggs, I'm not putting it provisional either, because you're not selling eggs now. So. He was a little upset, but he knew the game had been played and he lost, so. But I didn't know anything about chicken egg yield and production until the things you learn in this business, right? You have to know how to assess a Maine mole, and you have to know how many chickens make so many eggs. Let's get rid of that. And sales ratio study, we'll do that. We'll come to that. All right. Is that course number 103? Introduction, the basics. Yesterday was very much theory and abstract, and today's going to be much more pen and paper and calculators and all kinds of other things that we have to hopefully have built the right foundation. And 3 approaches to value. We mentioned yesterday that a general revaluation is required every 10 years under statute. Doesn't mean you have to do a reval every 10 years. Sometimes you have to do them every 5 years. You know, maybe you have to do them every 15 if the ratios are good and your data's good and people are generally being treated the way they want to be treated. And technically, we're doing a new valuation every year. Every year's a new value. Just because 85% of them stayed the same doesn't mean you didn't do a new valuation this year. Back in the day, almost 200 years ago, assessors didn't go out every day and do assessing. They didn't have building permits. They didn't do all those kinds of things. And when the state valuation was done every 10 years, it wasn't as big a deal. Now we're much more on it every single year. You know, deeds are recorded hopefully within a day or two of the closing. Even, I've seen examples even in the teens, in the 1920s, where a deed was passed, but not recorded for 6 years, 8 years, 10 years. You'll see that on the deed dates versus the recording dates. Maine is a race state. First one of the registry wins. 2 people get the same deed. Head to the registry.
I had that happen recently. I had a
Really?
deed that got recorded. The next month, they recorded a deed from 1991 that had never been recorded. Same
Oops.
property,
No kidding.
yeah. Same family.
That
It's
puts us in
interesting,
the
trying to
game.
explain the race
Yeah.
state and what they needed to do to make it right.
That comes into the phrase, you should seek your own legal guidance.
Yeah, well, that's what, yeah, this is how it is, this is what we're gonna track in our office. You should go talk to the person who did the deeds for you.
Yep. I've had estates do deeds, and they signed them in the right order, but they didn't record them in the right order. And so I brought this up to one party, and I said, your latest deed says you don't own the property, the latest recording. You might want to check with your attorney on that. And a month later, I got this one re-recorded as a corrected deed.
Yeah.
Because that was not the latest deed that we had. I've seen people record deeds for property they may or may not have owned. Kind of trying to do, a release deed that said, I release to so-and-so any property I might own right around this area. That was awful, and they were taken to court and they lost, and there were damages and lots of things. They paid for all the surveys. They were slapped pretty hard because it looked like and smelled like and was just a land grab kind of thing. I mean, the deeds up in that neighborhood were, it's 300 acres behind the farm, It's back in the bushes somewhere, in the town line and county lines. And they thought that they could go and acquire 20 acres of backland. They were wrong. But the property owner came in and says, how can you change the ownership? I go, I'm not in the title business. I'm in the latest deed business. And if you think that deed is wrong, then you need to challenge it. Well, that's not fair. You're right, it's not fair, but it's not for me to solve. Yeah, I'm not in the title business. I'm not in the boundary line establishment business. I'm in the valuation business. If somebody's got a problem with title, then that's up to them. Same thing in Bremen. Here's this 1933 tax deed, and do you know anything about this? I'm like, I wasn't even born then. My father wasn't even born then. What do I know about this deed? I wasn't here. Let me go look. 3 hours later, we found it. We found a little bit of documentation that said it was truly a land grab by the town treasurer. There was no tax, there was no lien recorded as there at that time. There should have been, but it was just a deed that says, me, the treasurer, sell it to the town of Bremen for $20.77. Here's the deed, and the deed looked all nice and, being a sale and from adequately advertised and on and on and on. Went a whole page of this is what I did. And guess what? Totally illegal. Totally. It was a land grab by the treasurer. 12-acre parcel on a lake. But I tracked it from, the property owners owned it at least 1929, which is why you keep your commitment books. And I was able to track it all the way through to today. Same family ownership, always was assessed, always paid taxes on it. But or the title company called us literally 14 hours before the closing and said, we found a problem. Can you solve this by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning? No. We did actually, but it was, what do you do? There's always something. Highest and best use of legally allowable use that will generate the highest return to the property over time. Must be physically possible and probable, legally permissible, financially feasible, and most productive, generating income or other amenities to an individual. That hasn't changed since people started doing values for property. Highest and best use, that's the big box story. It's like, oh, they're going to bring a big box tomorrow. And I'm like, no, they're not, because it's probably not financially feasible to put any sort of big box in the town of Morrow. It's just not that kind of a town. They have one store, it's in the center of town, and people go there for pizza and adult beverages, and that's about it. Highest and best use, this was a repeat from earlier. As I mentioned, IAA will be usually the training guidelines for Maine assessors. Market approach looks at comparable property sales. Income approach looks at possible income to the property. Return on investment, return of your investment. If you're gonna put $1 million into a property, you wanna get your $1 million back, but you also wanna get a fair market return on that. You wanna get 2% return in a risky building, that's pretty not unliquid. Illiquid, okay? Not an English major. Or do you want to put it in a CD for 1.9%, which is more liquid and probably a whole lot safer. When someone says, the Ponzi schemes and, I can get you 12% return on your money, and it's like, boy, only if you're going to rob the bank. If you're getting 12% return right now, that would be pretty amazing. There was a day and age where that was possible, but that's long since gone and will never return. 2% on CDs is probably about as high as it's going to get, at least for the near future. More people are buying buildings. My daughter and her husband bought a 3-unit, and they rehabbed one. Found out it cost a lot more to rehab than they thought, but yeah, good learning lesson. Thank you. They put it out as an advertisement at $800 a month in Biddeford for a 1-bedroom rehabbed apartment. At $800 a month, they had nearly 100 inquiries. I was amazed. And they found out pretty quickly that $800 a month was too cheap. But here they are. They had one person said, I will send you the check. I will send you a transfer right now. I'm not even looking at it. I will take it for $800 a month. In Union, $600 a month, maybe $550 for a 2-bed. So the market is, market is market. And then cost approach, we will do a couple of those. 4 great forces are repeated again from yesterday: physical, economic, governmental, and social. Terrifically enough, also in the same order as the previous page. I don't know if you remember that. PEGS was in a different order and a different piece of the paperwork. And social forces. Let's talk about big houses. How many houses do we see being built right now with 4 or 5 bedrooms? Not too many. 2 bedrooms, I've always told people, never build a 2-bedroom house. Always build a 3-bedroom house. It's just a little bit bigger, and it's not that much more at the time. I recommend to people that they build, if they're putting in a septic system, they put in a 3-bedroom septic system. The difference between a 2-bed and a 3-bed is just, 3 more pieces of pipe and some more stone.
We built a 3-bedroom house and put in a 4-bedroom septic because we're ready for whatever's gonna happen.
You never know if you're gonna need one in addition.
Garage,
or-
only build one.
Yeah, exactly. Economic principles evaluation, we've covered this. Those are the 12 principles. We've gone through that. And I will show you the highlighted stuff, and there's only one little highlight there. Appraisal process,
What was highlighted on the page you showed?
not much. Economic
title?
principles evaluation.
You
Oh,
have
that's it.
questions when you
That was it.
stop these?
Okay.
And so, but yesterday, there was, in course 1, it talked about,
Remember the whole thing?
there was only 3, I think, it talked about. Anticipation, substitution, and
Regression, regression we talked about?
no, I don't think that was in there too much. You can look up in course 1. Actually, I will look it up so we can get the right answer. A lot of these things overlap. The progression, regression, and substitution were the only 2 that were mentioned on page 30 4. So in keeping with that theme, it's probably not changed much. Appraisal process, and it can be a little confusing. We're using, the appraisal is doing the work. When, as tax assessors, our tax assessment duty usually only takes about, I don't know, how fast can you sign in? 10 seconds? When you do the commitment, that's your actual only tax assessment. Everything else is appraisal process. Where you're looking for information, define the problem, preliminary survey, data collection, what are you gonna use the property, what are you using the value for, market approach, correlation, and final value estimate. That's really 99.9% of what we do. Being an actual tax assessor is very brief, and hopefully always correct. Land valuation. Now we're gonna see. Page 13. As we mentioned earlier, developed lots, it is possible to have a developed lot without water or septic, but it is a rare situation involving extensive improvements to the land otherwise. Down in Newcastle, Chrysler, Plymouth. Did they build Plymouth there? Chrysler Jeep. Big flag. They've actually got 4 parcels in there, and they're all considered separate parcels because they were bought at separate times. Revaluation that we're about to do is going to fix some of that because it's all one parcel. But they're all considered developed lots in the old pricing schedule, and even though it's just parking lot or we're building out back, and I'll have to talk to the owners about that. May end up with the same total value, but built a little differently. Land pricing schedule helps establish equitable land values throughout the jurisdiction, as long as you've got your neighborhood adequately defined. Mentioned earlier, or yesterday, that it's possible to do a mini revaluation or a local neighborhood revaluation without doing the rest of the town, which isn't quite true because you've done the rest of the town and you've said, my data does not support any value changes, but this neighborhood does. And that's appropriate. That's how you know you need to do one neighborhood versus another neighborhood or another piece of town. It's a little bit of a misnomer if someone says, I only revalued that subdivision. Well, the reason you revalued it is that you found out the rest of the town is adequate. And that one is at 60% and it needs to come to 80% like the rest of the town or 100% like the rest of the town. So in order to do a local reval, you still need to do the rest of the work for the rest of the town. If you're doing sales ratio studies on a regular basis, not too big a deal. Those things start to leap right out. I found in Union, when I did the reval a year or 2 or 3 ago, that is the upper end of the market, the upper 500 parcels. You know, the 300s needed to be 340, the 400s needed to be 410 or 20. The commercial land needed to go from 70,000 to 225. That's how you find out. Market happens, and you just keep rolling the lawn and keep it in good shape. Depth factors. Let's see if we can do some examples. I'm going to meld 2 of these things together. I'm going to skip a little bit ahead. On page 18, we do this just a little bit. I'll put this on one page, one side of the board. let's take the first example. On page 15, we're going to see a depth factor chart. We need to have that available. So that has some pictures. To calculate a regular parcel, follow the 3 front foot value method steps and round the answer to the nearest hundred. On this example, just making sure the example matches up with the chart. Sometimes it didn't. This parcel, the first one, example, has a standard depth of 220. On page 15, and it has a front foot of 350. I will come back. So let's fill out some of these pieces of information. Unit price is, they call it something else. We call it the same thing. So in this particular example, its front foot value is what? 350. Times a depth factor. This property has a depth of 275 feet. It is on a standard depth chart of 220. We'll go to page 15 under factor 220 foot standard, which will be the next to the last column to your right. You will scroll your finger down to,
So we just go halfway between those
so
two?
we're gonna go halfway between, it'd be nice if this first example was nice and clean and easy, but we'll skip ahead. So if you go down to 275, in the right column, in the left column, depth in feet, down to 250, right? 250 and 300. At 250, we have 1.07 as a depth factor. Below that at 300, we have 1.12. As we are at 275, it would be logical to split the difference between those two, which comes out to an extra decimal place. It is what it is. I wish it was a little cleaner than that. I have no heartburn if you use 1.95, 1.95, and 1.10, or 1.9. I'm not going to panic either way. As long as you understand that you're going to be halfway in between. Yeah,
It looks like.
1.095, right. I have no heartburn with that. Would have liked this to have been a nice, clean example to start with, but. So I'll let you pick 1.095. Let's use the exact number. So the depth factor is 1.095. I will tell you that on the exam, you won't have that kind of an option. It'll be right square on, exactly to the right one. Again, the reason for the formula is that it's a fill in the blanks. Number of front feet is 110. Is this a triangle? No. So our factor is 1. Gives us our value. Actually, I'm working left to right, but that's okay. I'm trying to stay away from the screen. Simple multiplication. What is the value of this parcel? What is it?
4,200 if we round to the nearest hundred, right?
43,100.
Oops, I got an extra, yeah.
Oh, they used, oh no, they used this,
They use a different.
they use a different depth factor. They use 1.12, they rounded up. We'll make a note of that for corrections. I'd be better off to make up my own. That's okay, this is what we're gonna do for the next hour. So if you, so what'd you come up with using our calculations?
42,157.50.
42,000,
200.
was that?
We round the
Round
nearest
to the
200.
nearest, round to the nearest
Right.
100, right, so 42.2.
42.2? What was the exact number, just for giggles?
42,157.50.
Using our numbers. Did you get answers in your book? They're in the back.
On this example, it does work it through.
Okay. We're gonna come to the next one anyway. We need to do this so you can do a land valuations problem on Friday. Using our numbers, we're a little bit different than what's in the book. The book had 43.1, but they used 1.12.
Your formula just seems so much more simple. It
Yeah,
seems surprising that I
user-friendly.
can
This
get
is
the
what I
same
was
answer
thinking.
from that compared to.
This is the only thing you need to do, other than the depth factor when we get to a merge line. That's just a little calculation.
Yes, much more user-friendly.
Yep.
So what is the triangle?
Yep. So here's the triangle. This is a delta. And the factor is 0.6. Nabla. The factor is 0.3. And that is
Having a
always
side on the road versus a point on the road.
right. So it's
Okay.
the point on the road versus an angle.
Okay.
And this is always true. Do not ask me what happened to the difference of 0.10. I don't know. Nor do I care. Because I don't do that. I would just make a shape adjustment for something. Make some sort of logic. You could say, this is the building envelope and it is half the lot. So I'm gonna make a shape adjustment of 50%. You could do something as simple as that. That's what I do. For as many of those as I get, close it. I've recognized something. I don't think your numbers are right. Show me something different. Go right ahead. Here's all the market data for the last 20 years in the town of Warren. Show me something different. It's not my job to research it. Yes, it is.
When we,
Let's go ahead.
are we gonna have this get supplied to us at the? desk?
Absolutely. Yep.
And are they gonna want us to round up, like,
The problem will tell you.
okay, okay.
Yep.
We're having the same type of split number thing like we had last
You
one with the
won't
first
have a
example.
split number thing in the test. It's pretty spot on. The test is very good about not having you to make some sort of judgment call. Because, you know, that's right. You know,
But is it correct?
but is it correct? Assessors are always right. We had the discussion, and the assessor's always right, but they may not be correct.
Often misunderstood, but rarely wrong.
Like that one.
Yeah. Yeah. Judy will disagree with you on that one. Problem 2.1. Let's just do this a little, okay. Unit price. They use front foot value, so I'm gonna switch unit price to front foot value. What's our front foot value? 350. Depth factor. Standard depth 220. On your next to last column, 220 column.
Yeah.
At 225, they split the difference again. We're gonna split the difference, 1.01. 1.1, right? Oh. Front feet? Front feet?
185.
Is this a delta or nabla? The factor is, the value is,
65,400.
exactly,
65,397.50 cents.
97.50. So if you got that answer and the test had 65.4, that's probably the right answer. If it has that number exactly and 65.4, you're gonna take this answer. Make sense? So look at the answers to see what mostly equates to what the test answer
But what
is.
if the test says to round it to the nearest 100?
Then follow those instructions, yeah. You won't have,
So you'd want.
you won't have the exact number and then have you round to the nearest four hundreds. You won't see that kind of scenario.
It does say on this page, round to the nearest hundreds.
Yep. We're running into a tripwire here.
Usually don't do that.
Hmm?
Instead of the square root of this divided by that.
And it's not gonna be. I did have a math major in the class once, and they could do this by hand. I went, not use that stuff, but the test is gonna use the chart, so. Moving right along.
Got a question.
Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, so, like, does it make like a huge difference if you use like the way in the book instead of this way right here, or like for the test, or is there any difference at all?
If you use the formula,
Yeah.
it'll work.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Sounds-
And, you know, I was sitting in Warnell, first year, 93, sitting in Warnell going, I am dumb, I cannot understand this. You know, I've been doing valuations as an appraiser for a while, I couldn't get this. And I said, there's got to be some sort of formula that works. And back in the dorm, and that day, it was a dorm room with the bus driver convention on Thursday night, and you had to bring your own fan. That was the key to going to property tax school. Bring your own fan, because it was middle of the summer in Orono, it was 1,000 degrees outside. And I said, there's got to be an easier way, and I come up with this formula, which it's not that big a trick. It's in the book, it's just not laid out. And I've used it in the class ever since. I need to talk to Bill about putting it in there. Here's the formula.
Yeah, it's a lot easier.
So
I
much
mean,
more
well,
intuitive.
it's just probably the same, it just
Yeah.
This is
cuts
more
through the
intuitive.
chase.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, problem 2-2. 2.2. There's a depth chart. Standard depth 150. This property under the factor 150-foot standard. Most mistakes when they're made doing this is that they're in the wrong column and you get the wrong factor. This one is a 150-foot standard. It is 75 feet deep. I'll have to start with unit price. Unit price is 225. Depth factor is
0.71.
oops, wrong column, 0.71. Did anybody not find 0.71? Exactly where we're looking. It's okay to say I didn't find it.
I haven't found much of anything yet, I'm still struggling along with it, but I'll get it off before I'm done.
Yep. I'll show you on page 15. We'll look down to 125, 75, 150,
Okay.
and 75 feet is 0.71.
Thank you.
Yep. I will take my time with this, because this is, you know, a dozen questions on each one. We will do this until you go, I've had enough of this. All right, front feet, how many front feet?
220? Yep, 60.
60. Is this a triangle of any sort? The factor is? One. And I know I keep asking you, but I'm gonna split your head open and drive it in there. So what is the value of this parcel? Are we rounding to the nearest 100? We're rounding to the nearest 100. So what's the exact answer, and then what's the round?
9,600.
Is the exact number?
The rounded.
That's rounded? What's the exact number?
9,585.
9,585. Anybody not have that? Calculator? Okay. I've got this spare here. I had two, but I forget the other one. It's here somewhere. They sit on the desk in the dark until property taxes will go up. 2 years ago, I gave out one, I got back three, so I haven't figured that out yet either. It's a good deal. They were all promo calculators. You get them at trade shows and stuff. That was problem, what was that? Problem 2-2. Anybody not get, I don't have the answers. I'm trusting that your consensus of 9,600 is spot on. 2.3. Standard depth 250. Under the 250 chart, we are at 105 feet. 95, sorry. 105 is the frontage. 95 feet is, oh, wait a second. Front foot value is 425. Depth factor is 0.62. Under the 225, under the 250 foot standard, at 95 feet, 0.62. Number of front feet,
105.
is this a triangle? The factor is 1. Value to the nearest 100 is,
27,700.
what is it?
27,700.
27,700. Exact number,
27,667.50.
problem 2.4. Depth factor? Depth factor? 1.04? Anybody not on that? As I mentioned, it's usually getting in the wrong column because it's switching out. Total value to the nearest 100?
22,600.
22,
620.
620. Got it? Fed up with it?
Create those triangles.
Yeah, we're getting into that. Coming to the triangles. We'll find on page 20, we've got rear land. We're not gonna do rear land, we're gonna do merge factors or something. I'm gonna skip you ahead to problem, page 26, problem 2.13. And my assumption on page 26 is that the road is at the bottom of the page. That's my story I'm sticking with. I would have liked to have seen a little line that said road. That would have been good.
Oh, it does actually say, assume the street is at the bottom of each diagram.
Yeah.
Still would be nice.
How hard would it have been to just draw two lines, right? But some of these are word problems, so we have to keep moving. Standard depth. All right, so front foot value is 3. You know, because we'll do all these problems with the street at the bottom of the page, and then we'll get to the exam and we'll say, oh, the street's at the top of the page, and everybody's blown apart by it. So probably didn't happen. All right, front foot value 350. Could not have done that again if I tried. Went right down the well. Holy moly. Somewhere there's the tip of a pen. Fight it on the brake. You know, the hole is 1.5 inches across and the desk and it went right
Play
down.
basketball.
Yeah. I was putting like that on Sunday. That was a lot of fun. We're drawing them in from everywhere. Okay, standard depth for the deck factor. This is a 125 standard depth and 150. What is the depth factor? 1.1. 1.1. Yes! Love it. I got it.
I finally gotten my longhand multiplication to work, so we're good now. I'm getting the right numbers now.
Yeah. All right, so depth factor 1.10. Front feet,
Would it be the 250?
it would be the 250. Exactly right. When we get to the problem that's in the exam, then you'll have to suspend your belief in reality for a little bit, but that's okay. This is a what kind of triangle? Mabla. Because the little pointy part is on the street. And the factor is 0.3. What is the value of this parcel? And does it say anything? Doesn't say how to do it. We're going to round to the nearest hundred. We'll just we'll stay with that theory throughout.
I
$28. I got $28.
28.9 rounded. What's the exact number? Just for
28,875.
The upside is the formula works except for the merge line, and that's just an extra little exercise off to the side. We'll come to that after the break. We're gonna spend all morning doing this, and then we're gonna do sales ratio study this afternoon, and grading the building is the most important things. Those are a lot of answers to make exam. If you understand income approaches IRB, that's probably all you really need to know, is 3 questions maybe on these. But, some of the land and sales ratio study questions are cumulative. You get the first one wrong, you get the next 2 wrong. Try to avoid that. Looking out for you, just saying. It's not my job to trick you out, it's to help you be successful.
Do you have old copies of the tests that you're allowed to hand out?
I have no idea what you're talking about. The exam gets, we're off topic a little bit. The exam gets revised a little bit every year. They find questions where everybody's getting them wrong, they'll toss them and rewrite it or do something.
Okay, so they're similar enough that you can't just.
It's similar enough, yeah. Just for giggles, I took last year's and did it this year. It's not a ton of surprise, I passed. Barely. And you've been doing this for 25 years, it's like, this is a stupid question. How can anybody get that wrong? But it happens. Yeah, just barely. Did you come up with 28.9? Everybody's happy? We keep moving. 214. Front foot value is 325. Depth factor is,
Depends if we're gonna split the difference
Yeah.
between them again, or go with the rounding up like the other one did. If we split the difference, it would be 1.185.
let's do that, just for giggles, for our purposes.
Mhm.
Like I said, the exam is very straightforward. 1.15.
185.
Oh, yeah. Front feet, this is a what kind of triangle?
Delta.
And the factor is?
6.
Now, rounded answer is
1,800.
1,800?
18,500.
18,500 is the exact answer.
That's the
No,
rounded
no,
answer.
that's the rounded answer, I'm sorry.
Like that?
No, 18,500.
18,500.
Gotcha.
No, 18,500.
It's easier for you in the whole one first and then round it probably.
You not speak English much so goodly here, man.
You up and down my neck of the world.
Can't listen to But that's a good example, is you know, when you talk with people and each other, just because you know what you're talking about doesn't mean the receiver knows what you're talking about. So part of what I do with my taxpayers is to make sure I understand what they're really asking. My taxes are too high, I need an abatement. Why? Well, I just got a 30-day notice, or I got a foreclosure notice. You need a poverty hardship abatement application. I need to give you to the town manager, but let me double check some stuff before. So sometimes what they're asking for, they don't understand what an abatement is. 18.5, okay. Moving right along. 215. Front foot value. 325. think they swap it up just for this. Depth factor. 125, standard depth. At 165, this one's a little more straightforward. 1.15. Front feet. 23. It's an outlet, little pointy parts on the road. 0.3. A rounded value.
12,300.
Good. Two 16. Page 27. 217. What's it? 216. Page 27. Unit price. 325. Standard depth is 125. The actual depth is 75.
177?
177. Number of front feet,
220.
triangle factor,
26.
it's monotonous, isn't it? When you get to Friday, you're going, that's some of the gun we was talking about. I just read the text, that's all it is. Rounded value,
33,000?
33,000. You like it? I'm going to save the merge line for after the break. Maybe we'll go 5 minutes early. All right. Page 29. Let's do problem 220. Do you have the example on the one above it is done up for you?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, okay, it's good. So we've got an example to work with. Now you ask yourself, why would anybody have a lot with two sides not the same length? My answer is, happens all the time. If you're going to use this will work. So in this example of 220, what's our unit price? Our front foot value is 200. Depth factor, or which one do you use? What makes sense? Without even reading it, what would make sense to you?
Split the difference.
Average, total of the two and average them. Which you would be exactly right. That just makes sense. Or common sense. There's no common sense in assessment. So you take 125 plus 150 is 275.
No, we don't have depth factors, we don't have those.
Divide by 2 is 137 and a half. So when you're 125 standard depth 137.5 is about what? 125 standard deck. Right column, 1.05. Front feet,
145.
is this a triangle? The factor is they did it out one year. No big deal. You don't have to do that. You have a depth chart. What would you want? Unless you're a map. What's our rounded value to the nearest hundred?
26,300.
Not too complicated. Column 2.21. Front foot value. Depth factor.
One 135 is probably
150 chart, 150 column,
0.95.
0.95.
And there's no accounting for the fact that the majority of it is kind of triangularly shaped, like you wouldn't ever break it into.
Not in the question. Yep, you wouldn't, nothing. Yep, just exactly the way.
Is it a triangle? No.
No, it's not a triangle.
All right.
So with the trapezoidal, essentially, we're using 0.5 instead of 0.6 or 0.3.
You're using one.
Using one.
But I guess in order to find that average in there, oh no, you're right. Okay, I'm using that number somewhere else. It seems like there's gotta be a trick there, just like within, okay,
No.
there just isn't none.
No.
Mm.
Either it touches the road in a point or a flat side, or it doesn't. Even, if it was 1 foot on the side instead of 50, 221 divided by 2. But you won't see that anywhere. This is done exactly the same way all the way through. All right, rounded to the nearest 100 value.
51,000?
About
I know
50,900.
50,900.
What did I do wrong?
50,900 and something.
Oh, yeah, I think.
Well,
I know that, yeah.
943.75.
Yes. Let me finish that up.
Something like that.
That was stupid. That was from February.
So it wouldn't be 50,900?
I don't know.
If
It is.
Okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right.
50,000.
Yeah. With the 9 assessors in the room, you're gonna get 10 answers. Usually.
Let me just get that one, that's something.
Yep. The biggest mistake here that's made is you get the wrong column and overthink it. Just, swing at the pitch when it gets here. It's just, here's what it is. And some people will go, well, in my town, it's like, no. care about your towns, but I don't care about your town.
Oh, okay, I have another question on
Yep.
the triangle. So what if it is not a right-angled triangle? I'm thinking of the parcels on my prop in my town, and there's a couple of very odd triangular shaped
Yep.
lots. Is that still a,
If you were gonna use this method, you'd have to look at it and see what it is.
okay,
Like I said, this will work if but in order to come up with 325 per front foot, you had to have some sales, and sometimes, this is good information, but the sales weren't 325 for 10 sales. It was probably 250 to 400, and rounded to 325 or averaged to 325. What you're doing is taking market data, sales approach, market approach, and coming to a conclusion of a value that you can apply to all your little dinky properties. That's the goal. That's the just value. That's the equity situation. And that's what this achieves. So all of this builds towards that commitment book number. Did you treat everybody the same? Yes. Was it perfect? No. Why? Your statistics weren't perfect. Now, if everything was perfect statistically, your coefficient of dispersion, quality rating, would be 0, or 1.0, maybe 1.0. It never happens. Even post-reval, I've done all the data, I get a quality rating down to 9 or 10. Statistically, that's as good as it gets. And then I always look to the next year. What happened in the next year? How was that? What's my average? What's my quality rating? Did I guess the future correctly? Sometimes the market did a great reval in Bremen. All the different neighborhoods were within 0.01 of each other. 99.7 or 100.3 or whatever it is. They were all very, very, very tight. And the next year it went down 85%. Because the upper end of the market took off and it messed my ratios up. But when you're dealing with 1,000,004 properties and you think they might sell for 1,900,000, that's what the listing information told you before. The 1,000,004 sold for 1,000,003, and guess what? You're undervalued by 40%. Surprise. And a person challenged me. How come it was assessed for 900 and it sold for 1.4? I said, can't see the future. Well, you should be better than that. Okay. You got me on that one. 2.20.
222.
Was it? 222. You already did that one. That would be too easy if you already did it. Front foot value,
400.
depth factor, 510, 255.
It would be 255,
5 on
but
each.
it
I
goes from
just used the
250 to
1.12.
300. Yeah, I did 1.13, I was like, I don't know.
What is it?
So,
It comes, yeah, it
Does
does
555 is half?
255.
555 is half? The right chart, 200.
so 250 is
Wow.
1.12 and it jumps up to, so it's like, which do you
It's like
expect?
10 on 25. If you used 1.12, 13, I wouldn't have any heartburn with any of that. Again, the exam is more precise. It would be spot on. In theory, you could take that 0.10 spread and divide it by 50, splitting hairs.
Yeah,
Oh,
that one was a little bit too much of the split.
Yeah,
of
no,
A
it's
and
too on the
B.
low side.
So I just went.
What do you like, 1.12, 1.13?
I did them both ways to see what.
One, two?
That's what I would do.
The 1, 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so close that.
Yeah.
Yep. Either one's
That's what I
correct,
use.
as long as your math fit this. What was the 1.12, just for
Sure.
giggles. 1.2, just for giggles.
Times 175.
And then front foot, 175. This is a
See, we don't even need to round.
Oh, wait, that's the whole fun of it.
78.4.
78.4, or a little bit more if you use 1.3.
79,
Yeah. What was this?
79.
79, 100? And are we plus or minus 10%? Yeah. Being the rough standard. That's a court, it's a case law piece of information.
As long as you're within 10% of the,
What was
Yeah.
the word it used in the beginning of the first book yesterday? One of their, it started with an M, it was something.
Oh, manifestly wrong.
Yes.
Right.
And of course. it
That's in
manifestly
statute.
is-
Manifestly wrong is more than 10%.
Yeah.
Yep. But you wouldn't, you know, so on April 1st, you do one of these numbers, and in December, it sells for 50. Is that an abatement? I don't think so.
Based on the sales before, was that reasonable?
Yeah. The court's been, we're good on time, I gotta find the tip of that anyway. The court has said April 1st is April 1st. And then they've also said, well, it was a sale kind of close to April 1st. It was May 1st. Could have taken that into account, May 1st. All right, so April 1st is not April 1st. Because I've talked to other assessors and they're like, April 2nd doesn't exist next year.
yeah.
I'm like, no, you go to commitment in, you know, you're off, and it sells for 50 and you're off by a lot. You go into commitment in September for a fiscal year that begins July 1st, and you've got kind of a good piece of information, even though it's sold May 1st. Maybe that's a fight I'm not gonna deal with. Maybe I'm gonna make an adjustment down, so I'm okay with that. You know, it's kind of like instant replay. It's real easy to see the errors when you're going really slow, but, you know, we're making judgment calls on the spot. You know, let's move. I'd be a liar if I said I didn't do that kind of stuff. Well, I moved the value up. But I'll go knock on the door. And I might move the value in the next year. So if it helps the taxpayer, sort of helps. I'll probably move it down. I probably won't move it up, unless it's really something wrong. You know, the example in Newcastle sold for $240. That was a year ago, over a year ago. So I missed getting to it last year. I need to do it this year. I didn't let it go, so. So that one got addressed, but I had some good data to work with too, so we modeled house. So. Are you happy so far? I'm gonna twist a little merge line into the top of this, and then we're gonna rock and roll. We'll have you land valuation experts. Merge lines. Occasionally using this system, you're gonna have a parcel. I don't know if you can see past this thing. I can't take it down. I'll break it, I bought it. So we're going to come back to this. So to do a merge line, what the theory is that the 200-foot street has a particular influence on this lot value, and the $400 street has a particular influence on the property value. In this example, we've got a parcel that has an influence from one street and from another, not proportionally the same. The method to add this, to solve this, is to add the front foot values together. I'm going to read this to make sure I'm saying the words right. Divide the parcel depth by the front foot total. I use their example.
The front foot.
So we have 180.
Divided by 600, right?
Hmm. That's what I get for creating my own stuff. I want to make sure that I explain it right. Merge factor is, okay. So 180 divided by 600 equals 0.30. The front foot is 30%. So 400 times 30 equals 120. Oh, so the answer's over here. Copied too much. So what they're saying is that the 400-foot street has an influence of 30% from that street. I'm trying to get the answer when I already have the answer. 400 times 30% is 120 feet down. And 200 times 30% equals 60. What it's suggesting is that the parcel from the south was only influenced up this property 60 feet, and the $400 street was influenced 120 feet down that parcel. Then take, and what's our, this example, what is the standard depth is 100.
So then you go back to that regular,
Right.
okay. And then add them together.
Correct. So for the $400 street, the parcel, this is a 100-foot standard depth. The parcel is 120. On your 120 column, on your 100-foot column, rather, 120 feet has a depth factor of 1.1. How many front feet? Is this a triangle? So the value for parcel A, portion A of this parcel would be 2,200?
22,000.
For portion B of our parcel, it's a 100-foot standard depth. It is 60 feet. The standard, the depth factor is 0.77. Front foot value is 200. Number of front feet, not a triangle. So the value is 7,700. What is the total value of the lot? This is only the first amendment, we're going to do a couple. Yep. It's very likely that you'll get 3 questions on this type of diagram. What's the value of parcel, portion A, portion B, what's the total value? That's what I mean about some of this being cumulative. You get the first one wrong, you get the third one wrong. The second one wrong, you get the third one wrong. So we're gonna work with this. We'll take the rest of the morning, but we'll be pretty good. For examples. Okay, problem 2-33 on page 38. Following our formula, add the front foot values.
Then we divide that by our total depth of the 500, right, to get a merge factor.
Mhm. Which is
0.56.
so.
Doesn't seem to.
Isn't it 500 over 280?
Yeah, I thought it was 500 over 280.
What I said, I had 5.
Partial, oh, yes, 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 you're right, you're right.
Flatter.
It's okay, check my work, I'm all good. Don't hurt my feelings at all. As an assessor, I have no feelings. 500 divided by 180 is,
1.79.
what is it?
1.79.
1.79.
Oh, that's gonna work better in a second.
Yep.
It's not working.
I'm always a half a step ahead and sometimes I forget what I'm doing. Divide parcel by front foot depth, divide parcel depth by front foot value, multiply each front foot value by the merge factor, which is 100, 48. So this is 179 and what?
I got 322.2.
And it's only
320.
we're a foot over, but that's just rounding.
Was it 322.2 and
Mhm.
179?
So then what do you do to make it? Because that's.
That would be 501.2.
Just change the numbers, make it work.
Is that what you do, seriously?
In this example, yes.
The .79 was rounded up a bit from
Yeah.
.79.
So if you had it exact, would that work?
Probably.
So it's it's actually 1.7857. Would you do something like that?
And on
In
the,
the math?
yeah. For this example, that's the exact number. I would probably use 180 and 320. Because our chart's gonna be 180 and 320. So let's do that. No. Call it 180 and 320. And then figure the pieces from there. So front foot value portion A is 100, 200 on that one. Okay, so what's the standard depth? 200. So in the 200 standard depth at 180, what's the depth at? .95. So factor 200 foot standard, which is on the top street, 200 200 feet. Depth factor is .95. Number of front feet. What's the depth factor for, what's the cap on the bottom? 150. This guy's getting clever on it. 150, 320.
Where comes .10?
Yeah, I have to back you up because I'm kind of lost.
Yep, I'm okay with that.
Shouldn't 195 be for B?
And the FFE for B should be 180, not 200.
Yeah. 180, yeah. On the previous column. Yeah, 180. 200 front feet. Front foot value, 180.
But the
The
.95
depth
needs to go down to
factor
B.
Yeah, the depth factor should be for B, and it should be .71 for A.
The points.
Taking it backwards?
I think you just
I don't think it
multiply
matters.
that. Well, you're gonna be multiplying by 180 or 100, so it would change it if, oh, well, no, I see what you, no, it would be different.
So it's 100,
It would be different.
500 divided by 180. Oh, divided by 2. 1.79. 100 times 1.7 is 180.
I think we've got
You just had the depth factor,
the
I
depth
think, in the wrong
factor
spot.
for the,
So find the depth
the
factor for A.
standard depth factor for the
It should be
100
0.71.
foot value. 100 foot value is 200 feet, and we got 320.
So
The
the
standard depth on it
the
is
standard
not
depth
150,
is
it's
200.
150 on that one.
Oh, wait a minute.
Other street, the different street has a different standard depth.
Right.
Right.
Right, but for A, it's
Um,
200.
Yeah, but A is 200, right?
A is 200. So
And
the
we've got
two,
a depth of 320 feet.
Let's see,
no,
180.
depth is 180.
Did I, oh, so I got them backwards. How did I do that?
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking. So the 100-foot street has a depth of 180 influence.
Okay.
And so 200 standard, so for parcel A, I'm just double checking. Parcel A at 180 feet is .95. right?
Mhm. That's what I have, yeah. That's what I have.
It's going the other way. Thought it was okay.
You're right.
Check my work, it's all good. So this, no erasers.
Oh, because you.
So in this example,
I think if you do
We go by the one.
it'd be something like this.
I'm just trying to figure. 320.
If the graphic helps a little bit. So what they're saying is the 100-foot, the $100 street, the 200 standard depth has an influence of 180 feet. So looking at the standard depth of 200, at 180 feet, the factor is 0.95. The depth factor is 0.95. Wrong column? It'll do it every time. Wrong column will do it every time. And then the B parcel, with a standard depth of 100
150.
at 320 feet,
There's 150 in the standard depth.
the 150, yeah, this one is a math problem. Doesn't really matter, just scribble it all out, pretend I knew what I was talking about. So 150 at 320, roughly halfway between 1.41 and 1.53.
1.47 is dead center.
1.47.
1.46 would be the point two though.
4.6 is
Yeah,
good,
yeah.
4.6, 4.7. No fighting. Whatever one you use, it's okay. I can go either way.
So that one comes up. Did we do the, oh, we didn't do the math.
We haven't done any math yet.
Okay.
We're still negotiating whether I can draw on the board with the right numbers. The top one's 19,900.
19,000.
19,000.
19,000. So portion A of the parcel, 19,000. Portion B,
52,600.
52,
Yeah.
yeah. Give or take, depending which one you used. Total value 71.6, so thereabouts.
Yep.
Not worried about the number right now, just the process. Get our steps right. Doesn't help that I write down the wrong number, so keep an eye on me. Which public was that? That was 2.3. All right, 2.34. I will read my own writing. Need one more eraser. Steal some of the eraser. So you work on the next one, and I'll work on the next one, and we'll see if we meet in the middle here. 150 standard depth, 400 feet. Yeah.
Yeah, the standard depth changing on each street really messes with
Yep.
me.
That's why I keep saying, check the columns.
Right.
We're gonna do a couple more. Check my work though. I cleaned the board up a little bit, so it looks better. Two of us agree it must be right. That's not how it works. It's not very necessary to switch that up factor, is it? Off the standard depth.
Now I see why the urban areas hire like teams of assessors to do this stuff instead of
Yeah.
trying to do it on, like,
Yeah.
neighborhoods, I'm sure that happens pretty frequently.
Yep. Yep, they can. The truth is probably, you know, you'd have to have, you know, lots of good data for the 100-foot from lots that only go partway back. And really good data from the 50-foot that only go partway back. And then there's this oddball that goes all the way through.
Is it recommended that when you use your sale, the market analysis, to do one per street if it's that close, or is it the neighborhood really?
Yeah, if the market really tells you that, you know, maybe these two streets start a mile down the road. You've got sales on this street that are higher because there's residential on this side, but on this side, there's commercial, or who knows what. Or it could be the other way around. Then you've got to make decisions. Is the influence commercial to residential 50-100, or is it commercial to residential? Does the market tell you?
But if they're zoned differently, they can't be merged together.
For value purposes, yes, they can be merged together.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's one lot, you can't separate the lot.
But the zone doesn't have to follow the boundary lines of the property. It can
Right.
go Okay.
So let's say it's zoned commercial residential, but the building that's on the property is commercial, I'd focus up this way.
Okay.
If the property down here was residential, I'd focus down this way. And not worry about that so much. You know, again, highest and best use, is it legal to do commercial here without some approval? And if there's no approval, then it's not legal. Legal, again, not necessarily law, but ordinance.
Right.
Same? She left, what we should do is all leave and come back. Okay, moving on to the next one. We're gonna keep practicing this. 236. do you want to use for a depth factor? Or for a, divide total parcel depth by foot value total. Was that?
I did make 0.06.
Get this back. Problem 2.36.
I'm trying to see what step you're at.
This
Your
one.
merge factors, 1.93, okay.
Add the total
So,
together,
yeah.
350. Divide total depth, which is 325, by the front foot total.
The merge factor
Yeah.
is
About 0.93. Yep.
0.93.
Yeah.
He's asking about the standard depth. It's spot on.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
was like, what is the depict? It says exactly what it says.
Oh,
It was an average.
B.
Yeah.
They call it a merge factor. Then there's the depth factor. I'm trying to come up with a different word than that, so we can make a change next year.
No, I thought you were asking what depth factor to pick, and I'm going,
Oh,
but
I haven't-
it's spot on. It's like there's nothing to pick, so I thought I must have gotten less.
Yeah, I haven't got that far.
Okay.
93 is the merge factor.
Or do 139.
So it came out just a little different. What'd you use?
139 and 186.
Right.
139.
139
Well,
for lot A and
why-
186 for lot B.
Because
Why
the
not
one-
do 140 and 185, since they're actually gonna be on our
One-
chart?
You can,
140 and 185 works. You want to get real specific.
And we'll get, it'd be easier to pick numbers though. for
You can
depth
get extra
factors.
points on this house for being specific. But in this example, in real life, I'll use 140, 185. This is fine too. Yep. It'll be just a little different, but it's okay. Method,
Mhm.
process. And the charts are years 5 usually, so.
I just thought they would.
Yep. It'll be pretty close either way. So use the depth factor for portion A. What'd you use?
1.06?
1.06, is that okay? Consensus? Yeah. And then for parcel B, your depth factor?
1.12? Is that what it is then?
Give or take a foot. We'll try to overcomplicate this too much. Like I said, the exam is spot on. You're not
So if
gonna-
it's not spot on, then we never doing something wrong.
Yeah, I guess. If you're pretty close, you probably got close enough so you could find that answer. So parcel A or portion A of parcel,
$19,080. 26,880. $45,960. 46 even.
46 if you're running near 100. Friday's the vendor. It won't trick you out, the information is there. And like I said, usually the error comes is getting the wrong depth factor column. we used 100 instead of 125, or we read 125 and you still go to the 100 column, or. And that answer will be, the wrong answer on the wrong column will be on the test. So you'll go down through and go, hey, I got it right. What happened? A little attention to detail. That was 36. Let's do, feels like we're getting comfortable, so now we're gonna see if we can, we got the hook, let's see if we can set the hook. What's that?
But that sounds like trouble.
It does. So let's do 237. Page 43. This is pretty specific. I'm not going to do the chart on the board. I want to leave that merge line up there. We're not going to touch the merge line until after lunch. We're going to do everything else that we're going to come after that one. All right, so let's walk through problem 2.42. The upside is that they corrected the little angle that was on parcels E and F, so that there's going to be no more fighting about whether it's parallel Pythagorean theory problem or anything else. So let's start with parcel A. We're going to skip over B. Parcel A, standard depth of 125. Right? Front foot,
165? Oh, no, 200, sorry.
yep, you're both right. Front foot value 200. Number of front feet,
165.
165 total, but
Yep, break it apart.
Yeah.
correct. We're gonna break it apart.
So do you?
So we're gonna have A and
65
B.
and
I'm trying, I wish I had
A1,
more-
you mean?
I need another board.
triangle.
What he says.
We'll just write it on this wall. We'll see if they get upset with that. Parcel A has two portions.
So a triangular portion.
Yeah, it's got a little triangular
So,
portion.
so you just break off that little triangle right down through.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And make it
exactly.
100 feet and then 60.
It's gonna make it 100 feet and then 65.
And we already know it's 125. Okay.
65 and 100. So it's got a standard depth of 125, it's 125 feet deep. So it is a factor of 1 for the depth factor. Now sub A, oops, hang on. I'm going to write this on the board, but I want to save it. Sub A, which is the little triangle, which is what kind of a triangle?
Delta.
Delta has a factor of
0.6.
0.6. So sub A has a front foot value of 200. It has a depth factor of,
125, or well,
yeah, what's the depth factor?
1.
1.
I just looked at the chart.
Yep. Don't get hung up with that though. It's just one of those things, if the depth factor is 125 and the depth is 125, it's a factor of 1. If you really want to do this like we've been doing it, you would actually go to the chart and go, oh, 125 depth, 125 feet, 1.0. Follow the steps we've been using so far. So it's a depth factor of 1. It has 65 front feet, because we've lost part of that to the rectangle. A sub B, which is our rectangle, still has 200 front feet. It has a depth factor of
One.
Say it. One. It has 100 front feet. But it does not, it's not a triangle. I'd like to draw this. I'm gonna draw it anyway. We'll come back after lunch, I'll do a little drawing. Just not enough room. So A, sub A and sub B. So sub A has a value of, one more times.
7,800.
Was that
7,800?
for sub A
Yes.
and sub B,
20,000.
total value,
27,800.
27. C.
C, wouldn't you,
C.
wouldn't you take that where the 100-foot is over on the right-hand side and kind of make a triangle right down, I mean, a rectangle right down across there?
You need to double check my answers. The answer is yes, we're gonna do two pieces, but we'll double check that. Chapter 2. Yep. Correct. So C,
The cheat sheet doesn't have the same problem.
it does actually.
Cheat sheet, okay? Okay.
Yep.
Great.
Yeah, the cheat sheet has the right problem. So C is broken into two pieces as A. C sub A and C sub B. We should actually be using numbers, but that's another issue. So what's the frontage of C in total?
150.
150? Where do we get that number?
The top, at the top, the two parcels together,
At the top of the two parcels together.
the E and F.
Yep. I knew you were gonna get that, I was just testing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So C sub A has 100 on one side, 120 on the other. So C sub A, we will get the depth of that parcel by what?
Averaging. So it's
Averaging.
110.
The
Total of the
100
two.
plus the 120.
Yep, an average.
110.
So it is a 125 standard depth at 110 feet. Parcel sub B has 55 feet. So 125 standard depth. What's its depth factor? That's
0.89.
0.89. What do you get for C sub A?
18.
Is it 18.8?
Mm-hmm.
C sub B?
89. He doesn't.
Twenty-seven, 7. Thereabouts. I'll come up with something similar. Anybody want to run out of the room screen? All right. Are you happy? Parcel D. Similar to A, but upside down. Parcel D. Similar to A. Easy. Told you, you'd be experts by noon. Do we concur? E?
It's supposed to be 125.
What is it?
On E, I think it's 125 instead of 120.
Yep. Keep an eye on me, I'm telling you. I only make mistakes just to see if you're paying attention. So E is only a single parcel or single equation. So what number are we gonna use for the depth of E?
An average,
What is it?
115?
So it's a 100-foot standard depth. What's the depth factor?
the depth factor is 100 feet, 1.07.
Front feet, 100. What's the value of E?
4280. So 4,300 if you round.
Who?
4,280 or
42.
4,300 if you round.
4280. So that's E. What's F?
F is an easy one.
Standard depth of 100. Standard depth of 100.
2,200.
How deep is that?
125.
125. That's a 100 standard depth.
1.12.
1.12. Always trying to trick us up or something, aren't they? I tell them that. These problems were written
It's
60s
kind
or
of great,
actually
because it makes
70s.
you think about all the different things all
There's
in a
one
short
of these
period
on
of
the
time.
test.
Huh?
There's one of
This
these
is
on
on
the
the
Yeah.
test.
This is exactly on the test. Well, not exactly these numbers, but it'll be close enough.
This whole block.
That block is on the test. My suggestion is, we'll do that, we'll do B, we'll have time for B. My suggestion is take the chart on 43B and just put in a couple different numbers. Don't get too fancy, but just try it out with, a standard depth at the top at 125, and just work through it. 150, we just work through it. Don't get too complicated, because it'll do fast. So we're gonna get to B. I'm not sure we get there. Pretty close. Someone's gonna be upset I erased her name. B, let's get, let me put the details on B and then I'll let you start working on it. Or you can start working on it and I'll still put the details on. But you're gonna have 3 parts. It's a 3-part question. This is exactly. So first things first. We've got 3 parts to this puzzle. B1 being the first part. And much like we did A, this would be 125 standard depth. So B1 has how many front feet?
One of those is
Yeah,
Charles is wrong. What?
B2 is wrong, your calculation, your front foot value for B2 is wrong on the board.
Used to be,
So you're allowed.
Should be 40.
No, B2. 240, 200.
B1 is 200, yeah. Um,
200.
Shouldn't be two, be one. Oh, okay.
B1 is here.
The standard.
Yeah, 242.
Actually, this will be original, so we'll come back to that. Hey, it's on Jerry. Let it go, dear. Okay, so B1, 50 front feet, front foot value of 200, depth factor of 1. We'll do the values later. Okay. B2 and B3 has a merge line. Add the front foot values. Divide the total parcel depth, which is by 240.
The merge factor is 0.94.
Oh, that's just cheating at it.
What's your
Teacher's pet, trying to get points here.
I
And
kept it at
then
the .937.
multiply each front foot value. So 40 times 0.94 and 200 times 0.94, 36,
Depends on how you round it.
37. 37,
188.
was it?
188.
Which one do you want to change
88?
it?
Yep.
You
Here's
can,
a little side piece of trivia.
I was just gonna say, there's a shortcut, you just have to do one of them and
No,
subtract.
there's no shortcuts. The side piece of trivia is, if you add these two together, it should equal your total depth.
Yes.
It's a little check and balance. You don't usually need to even think about it. But if you add these two together, it will add up to your total depth.
Side note, just to kind of jump in there, you have a piece of paper during your exam
Mm-hmm.
that you can write all of your work down, and the more work you write down and show what you've done
Mhm.
helps towards them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like,
Yep, put that piece of paper in there.
yeah.
And number 42, test number, this is my work. And if Jeff looks down through it and goes, oh man, they used 0.93, and they came up with a different answer, but the process was right, you might go, that's good enough. Probably not gonna happen. But because the answers are very specific. There's no judgment call at all, so. Okay, multiply each by the merge factor. So, in our little parcel here of 225 feet, we have an influence this way of 37, and an influence this way of 188. So looking at our depth factor for standard depth of 125, we have 188 feet. We'll round up to 190. So on B3, what's the depth factor? Got 190,
Then it would be
123.
123, I'm sorry.
Yeah, 1.23. 122 and change, that's okay too. You're in the right,
I did.
you're in the right column. Yeah.
Oh, because you rounded up to the 190.
I
Okay.
would go 190.
Yeah, I did that.
You can, if you did the exact number, what's the exact number?
122.
122 is good?
122.
Yeah. You're in the right column.
We'll
If you
get
weren't in the
there.
right
That's
column,
key.
it would be something totally different. But you're
And
in,
even if we're off just by like a hundredths place, we're gonna get, the right answer is going to be like plus or minus a few thousand from whatever.
Or-
Yeah, so-
no,
yeah,
not
even less than that.
Well, yeah.
But you won't,
When you
you won't
round to
have
nearest
that.
100, you probably still
Yeah.
get it.
The exam won't have this kind of issue.
Okay.
Where it's just extrapolated in between the two. It will not have that issue. So front feet is 100, right? Depth factor, front foot value 200. It's gonna give us a number. Okay. B2 is a standard depth of 100, and we're 37 feet, 0.61. And that ballpark's good with me? Yeah. Again, you got the right column, front feet, 100. Now we get some values. This one is 10,000. Right? And the next one is 24,000 something?
2440.
Was it 2440? Oh, 40?
No,
No, it's 2,400.
2,440.
2,000.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
2,440.
At this stage, is it safe to drop off the little, the
Pennies?
change? Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Again, for our purposes, yeah, I'm all good with that. I'm more worried about the process.
Okay.
The exam, you don't have exact number. And then the last one's
24,400.
24,400. So total value of the property is
36,840.
all within a few pennies of that, rounding to the nearest 108.
The picture of it just looks scary. It's really all just
It
simple
looks
math, it breaks
scary.
down into simple math.
Yep, that's why I did B last,
Mhm.
so I wanted to link back up to this.
It's a great problem though, because you have to think about all the different little pieces all.
Right.
The next one's better.
And all the data's there, but then you get doing top to bottom and you forget the depth factor's different or something's changed. That's why, that's why in this example, I did across the bottom with the same depth factor and across the top with the depth factor. A little trick of the test, but then you're not going to A, B, or whatever it might be. A, B, C. Oh, no, they changed it. Okay, I'm good with that. That's just what it was saying. This example has evolved over the years.